On the afternoon of November 25, 1988, 17-year-old Junko Furuta left her workplace and began what should have been a familiar journey home. She had no reason to believe anything was wrong. The streets of Misato, a quiet city in Japan's Saitama Prefecture, were alive with the routines of everyday life. Office workers made their way home after long shifts. Students walked through neighborhoods laughing with friends. Families prepared dinner, expecting another ordinary evening. Among them was Junko. She was known as a responsible, hardworking teenager with a bright future ahead of her. Friends described her as kind, polite, and determined. She attended Yashio Minami High School and balanced her studies with a part-time job at an electronics store, where she had earned a reputation as a dependable employee. Like many teenagers, Junko had dreams beyond the small routines of daily life. She hoped to graduate, build a career, and make her family proud. Those who knew her remembered a young woman who rarely caused trouble and preferred to stay focused on school and work. Nothing about that Friday suggested it would become one of the darkest days in modern Japanese criminal history. As Junko rode her bicycle home that evening, she unknowingly crossed paths with a group of teenage boys. One of them was Hiroshi Miyano, a 17-year-old with connections to a local youth gang. According to investigators, Miyano was known among his peers for his violent behavior and his association with members of the Yakuza, Japan's organized crime syndicates. Whether those connections were as influential as rumors suggested has been debated, but investigators agreed that Miyano exercised significant control over the people around him. What happened next unfolded in a matter of minutes. According to court records, another teenager, Shinji Minato, approached Junko while she was riding her bicycle. After forcing her from the bike, he fled the scene, pretending to be a helpful bystander when Miyano arrived moments later. Miyano presented himself as someone trying to assist her. He told Junko he wanted to help recover her stolen bicycle and persuaded her to accompany him. She had no reason to suspect the truth. The theft had been planned. The concern was an act. The young man offering help was one of the people responsible for setting the trap. Instead of leading her to safety, Miyano directed Junko to an abandoned warehouse before taking her to a house in Tokyo's Adachi ward. It belonged to the parents of one of the boys involved. That house would soon become the center of one of the most horrifying criminal investigations Japan had ever seen. According to investigators, once inside the home, Junko was prevented from leaving. She was threatened, isolated, and held against her will. The boys reportedly told her family that she had run away, while they attempted to conceal her whereabouts from anyone who might begin searching. Over the coming weeks, several other teenagers entered and left the house. Some participated in crimes. Others witnessed events and remained silent. Investigators later concluded that numerous opportunities existed for someone to alert the authorities, yet no report was made that could have saved Junko in time. The reasons for that silence have been examined for decades. Some witnesses later claimed they feared retaliation from Miyano and his associates. Others admitted they simply failed to appreciate the seriousness of what was happening. Whatever the reasons, the consequences were devastating. Meanwhile, Junko's parents became increasingly worried. When she failed to return home, they contacted police and searched desperately for answers. At the time, authorities initially considered the possibility that she had left voluntarily, a common assumption in missing teenager cases during that era. With limited evidence suggesting otherwise, the investigation failed to uncover the truth hidden inside an ordinary suburban home. Days turned into weeks. The family continued searching. Friends wondered why Junko had disappeared without contacting anyone. Her workplace expected her to return. Schoolmates hoped she would soon be found. No one imagined the reality. As the investigation later revealed, Junko remained alive inside the house throughout much of this period, held captive while the outside world searched for clues that never came. The failure to discover her location in time would become one of the most painful aspects of the case and would later spark widespread criticism of how missing person investigations were handled. By the end of December 1988, nearly a month had passed since Junko vanished. For her family, hope was fading. For the people responsible, the walls were beginning to close in. An unrelated police investigation into another crime would unexpectedly expose the truth and bring one of Japan's most notorious criminal cases into the public eye. The discovery would horrify investigators, shock the nation, and leave lasting scars on Japan's criminal justice system that are still discussed decades later. For nearly 40 days, Junko Furuta's family searched for answers. Every passing day deepened their fear. They contacted relatives, friends, and police, hoping someone had seen or heard from their daughter. They could not understand how a responsible 17-year-old who had never shown any intention of running away could simply disappear without a trace. Like many missing person investigations at the time, the case initially moved slowly. With no immediate evidence of an abduction, authorities considered the possibility that Junko had left voluntarily. It was a conclusion that would later be heavily criticized, especially after the truth emerged. While her family desperately searched, Junko remained imprisoned inside a house in Tokyo's Adachi ward. According to court records, she was prevented from leaving through intimidation and constant threats. Her captors reportedly warned her that any attempt to escape or contact authorities would place her family in danger. Those threats became one of the primary reasons she remained trapped. Investigators later determined that several people entered the house during the weeks of her captivity. Some actively participated in crimes. Others witnessed what was happening. Still others suspected something was terribly wrong, but never contacted police. Years later, that silence would become one of the most disturbing aspects of the entire case. Many people would ask the same question. How could something so terrible continue for so long without anyone stopping it? Some witnesses later claimed they were afraid of Hiroshi Miyano because of his reputation and his alleged connections to local criminal groups. Others admitted they simply chose not to become involved. Whatever their reasons, every day that passed meant another lost opportunity to save Junko. The neighborhood itself appeared ordinary. Families went about their daily routines. Children played outside. Neighbors greeted one another as they always had. From the outside, the house looked no different from countless others on the street. Nothing suggested that one of Japan's worst criminal cases was unfolding behind its walls. As December turned toward January, Junko's disappearance was becoming increasingly mysterious. Her employer had not heard from her. Her classmates had no explanation. Her family refused to give up hope. Every phone call carried the possibility of good news. Every knock at the door raised expectations. But the answers never came. Instead, investigators would later discover that the truth had remained hidden only a short distance away. Ironically, the breakthrough in the case had nothing to do with the missing person investigation itself. On January 4, 1989, police arrested 2 of the teenagers connected to the house in connection with the unrelated assault of another young woman. During questioning, detectives began noticing inconsistencies in their statements. As pressure mounted, one of the suspects revealed information that immediately changed the direction of the investigation. He told officers that there had been another victim. A girl. She had been held inside the house. The information stunned investigators. Police quickly moved to investigate the address that had been identified. By the time they arrived, Junko was no longer alive. The suspects had already attempted to conceal the evidence of their crimes. The discovery horrified experienced detectives. Even officers who had spent years investigating violent crime reportedly found the scene deeply disturbing. News of the case spread rapidly across Japan. As details emerged during the investigation and later court proceedings, public shock turned into outrage. People struggled to comprehend how a teenage girl could disappear for weeks, while so many chances to intervene had been missed. The focus of the investigation now shifted toward identifying everyone involved and understanding how the crimes had been allowed to continue for so long. Detectives began reconstructing the timeline. They interviewed dozens of witnesses. They gathered forensic evidence. They examined the roles played by each suspect. What they uncovered would become one of the most controversial criminal investigations in Japanese history, not only because of the crimes themselves, but because of the questions it raised about fear, responsibility, and the justice system. The arrests that followed would finally bring those responsible before the courts. But for Junko's family, justice could never erase what had already been taken from them. The arrests marked the beginning of one of the most closely watched criminal proceedings in modern Japanese history. As investigators pieced together the evidence, prosecutors sought to determine not only what had happened to Junko Furuta, but also the individual responsibility of each person involved. 4 teenage boys emerged as the principal suspects. Because they were juveniles under Japanese law at the time of the crimes, the courts initially withheld their identities from the public. Japanese media followed legal restrictions designed to protect the identities of minors, although some names were later published by magazines and circulated widely outside official reporting. The investigation revealed that the crimes had not been committed by a single individual acting alone. Instead, prosecutors argued that multiple people had participated in different ways over the course of Junko's captivity. Some took leading roles, while others assisted or failed to intervene. The complexity of the case made the trial especially challenging. Detectives spent months collecting witness statements, examining forensic evidence, and reconstructing the timeline. The prosecution argued that the crimes demonstrated planning, intimidation, and a sustained effort to prevent Junko from escaping or contacting authorities. The defense presented various arguments regarding the ages of the defendants, their level of involvement, and the influence they exerted over one another. Throughout the proceedings, one name appeared repeatedly: Hiroshi Miyano. According to prosecutors, Miyano exercised significant influence over the group. Witness testimony described him as the dominant figure, someone whose reputation and aggressive behavior intimidated others. The court heard evidence suggesting that several individuals who knew about Junko's captivity failed to report it. That fact deeply disturbed the Japanese public. Many people wondered whether fear alone could explain so many missed opportunities to save a life. The case also drew attention to the role of adults connected to the house. Questions were raised about what had been known, what had been suspected, and whether earlier intervention might have changed the outcome. Those questions fueled national debate for years after the trial concluded. When the court finally handed down its decisions, many members of the public were stunned. Because all 4 principal offenders were juveniles at the time of the crimes, they could not receive the death penalty under Japanese law. Instead, they received prison sentences of varying lengths based on their individual involvement and the court's findings. For many observers, the punishments felt inadequate considering the gravity of the crimes. Families of the victims, legal experts, journalists, and ordinary citizens questioned whether Japan's juvenile justice system was equipped to deal with crimes of such extraordinary severity. Public discussion quickly expanded beyond this single case. Should juveniles who commit exceptionally serious crimes face harsher penalties? Should the law be changed? How should society balance rehabilitation with accountability? Those questions dominated newspaper editorials, television debates, and legal discussions across Japan. The Furuta case became a turning point in conversations about juvenile crime. Although legal reforms would come gradually over the following years, the case remained one of the strongest examples cited by those advocating changes to Japan's juvenile justice system. For Junko's parents, however, the legal arguments offered little comfort. No sentence could restore the daughter they had lost. No courtroom victory could undo the weeks they had spent searching, hoping she would somehow return home. The trial had answered many questions. It had identified those responsible. But it could never repair the immense loss left behind. Even after the convictions, the story did not disappear. In the years that followed, reports emerged that some of the convicted offenders were released after serving their sentences. Some were later involved in additional encounters with law enforcement, though not all reports have been consistently documented in official records. These developments reignited public anger and kept the case in the national conversation long after the courtroom doors had closed. For many people in Japan, the Junko Furuta case became more than a criminal investigation. It became a symbol of systemic failure, a reminder of what can happen when fear silences witnesses, when warning signs are overlooked, and when justice is perceived as falling short of public expectations. The final chapter of this story would focus not on the perpetrators, but on Junko herself, the lasting impact her case had on Japan, and why, decades later, her name continues to be remembered. When the trial ended, Japan was left with more than a criminal case. It was left with difficult questions that refused to disappear. How could a 17-year-old girl vanish for 40 days without being found? How could so many people know that something was wrong and remain silent? How could a crime of such magnitude lead to sentences that many believed were far too lenient? Those questions continued to echo long after the courtroom emptied. For Junko Furuta's family, however, the debate was never about legal theory or public policy. It was about a daughter, a sister, a young woman whose future had been stolen before she had the chance to begin adulthood. Before November 1988, Junko had been an ordinary high school student with ordinary dreams. She worked part-time after school, studied for her future, and was known by friends and teachers as polite, responsible, and hardworking. She was remembered not because she sought attention, but because she treated others with kindness and respect. In the years following the trial, many people urged that Junko should not be remembered solely for the horrific circumstances of her death. They believed she should also be remembered for who she was in life, a teenager with ambitions, friendships, and a future that should never have been taken away. Her case became one of the most widely discussed criminal cases in Japanese history. It has been examined in books, documentaries, academic studies, and legal discussions. Law schools have used it to explore the limits of juvenile justice. Criminologists have studied it to better understand group violence, intimidation, and bystander behavior. Psychologists have examined how fear and social pressure can influence the decisions of witnesses. Perhaps the greatest lesson from the case is not simply about crime. It is about silence. Investigators concluded that numerous people became aware, to varying degrees, that something was seriously wrong. Some later admitted they were frightened. Others chose not to involve themselves. Some underestimated the danger. Whatever their reasons, every missed opportunity represented another chance that was lost. The Junko Furuta case remains a painful reminder that choosing not to act can sometimes have devastating consequences. It also influenced public discussions about Japan's juvenile justice system. In the years that followed, lawmakers and legal experts continued debating whether existing laws adequately addressed exceptionally serious crimes committed by minors. Although legal reforms were introduced over time, Junko's case remained one of the defining examples referenced whenever those discussions returned. Decades have passed since her death. Neighborhoods have changed. The house connected to the crime no longer stands. New generations have grown up knowing the story only through documentaries, books, and news reports. Yet Junko Furuta's name has never been forgotten. Not because people wish to remember the cruelty, but because they refuse to forget the consequences of indifference, intimidation, and the failure to protect someone who desperately needed help. Her story continues to remind society that justice is measured not only by the punishment given after a crime, but by the willingness to prevent tragedy before it happens. Today, Junko Furuta is remembered across Japan as more than a victim of a notorious crime. She is remembered as a symbol of resilience, a reminder of the importance of speaking up, and a name that continues to inspire conversations about protecting the vulnerable and ensuring that no one is ever abandoned when they need help most. Her life was tragically short, but the impact of her story has endured for decades. And perhaps that is why, even today, people continue to tell her story, not to glorify violence or dwell on horror, but to honor a young woman whose future was stolen, and to ensure that the lessons of her case are never forgotten. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy carefully researched documentaries on true crime, history, and the world's most compelling cases, subscribe to Whispered Pages and turn on notifications so you never miss a new documentary.